Hi, this is Jesse Liberty from Telerik. Today we're going to be taking a look at the RadialGauge. RadialGauge control is part of the Telerik rad controls for Silverlight and WPF for XAML and .NET development. In looking at the RadialGauge, we'll start by looking at how you create a gauge, add indicators to that gauge, and how you set the value of the indicators. To see this, let's get started in Visual Studio, where we will create a new project called RadialGauge. Set that as a Silverlight 5 application and add data visualizations, which will also add its dependencies to our references. When Visual Studio settles down, we're going to open up the grid and let's add a Telerik RadialGauge. Name that XRadialGauge and set the width and height of our gauge. In this case, we want it to be circular, so we'll set them to the same value. In the designer, we can see the radial gauges in place. What it needs is a scale. So inside the radial gauge definition, we'll add a radial scale and we'll set the minimum and maximum values for that scale, in this case 0 and 100. These can, of course, be whatever values are appropriate to your application. What we need now is an indicator to point to a value. We begin by adding a section of radioscale.indicators. And there are two indicators that we're going to add this time. First, an instance of needle, and secondly, an instance of pinpoint. Pinpoint functions as the small circle you see in the center of the gauge control. Let's run that and take a look. And we can see that as soon as this comes up, we have our gauge. It's on a scale from 0 to 100. There's our pinpoint in the center and the needle currently pointing to 0. Let's see if we can have that needle point to a more interesting value. In order to do that, all we have to do is go to the needle declaration and add a value attribute. We'll set the value to 65, and you can see that immediately is pointing to 65. When we run the application, we get a very clean needle pointing to the halfway mark between 60 and 70. For Telerik, this is Jesse Liberty. I hope you've seen how easy it is to create a radial gauge and that you will stay tuned for a look at the other RadGauge controls. I look forward to talking with you again very soon.